Hey, Matt.
Hey, Jen.
What are you listening to this week? Welcome to What Are You Listening to This Week, the weekly podcast where we talk about our favorite songs. Some old, some new, all good. I'm Jenn Tully, and this week I'm joined by Matt Sidhom, who you know from the Super Awesome Mix podcast and the Super Awesome Mix podcasting network. Let's get started. Matt, what are you listening to this week?
Yeah, so I stumbled upon an album from a documentary that I was not familiar with. It's called Echo in the Canyon. And I'm a huge Wallflowers fan, right? Like, so everybody just knows kind of One Headlight and that first album that came out back in the 90s. But I've kept up with them and listened to all their stuff. So maybe I'm thinking because Jakob Dylan is prominently featured in the soundtrack, maybe some algorithm found me, and that's how I stumbled upon this. But yeah, so what this documentary is about is kind of the rise of the California sound. And in the soundtrack, they have Jakob Dylan along with some friends, a different friend on each track, kind of recreating some of these classic songs that came out of this era. So, yeah, I mean, I loved every track, but I'm just going to hit on a couple of them. The first one was Never My Love, which is a song by a band called The Association. And Jakob Dylan is joined by Norah Jones on this one. And the original is such a like cool little love song, but then these two kind of give it their own sort of bluesy feel to it and kind of give it an older sound, right? Like the other sounds the original sounds older because it's from a different era, but they're clearly young voices singing it. Here they sound a little older, so I think it's kind of cool when you put the two together because it's almost like a song that a couple would sing to each other when they're younger, and then you get the version that they'd sing to each other when they're older as well. So I don't know. I just thought that one really stuck out for me.
Couldn't agree more. I loved this soundtrack. I was so glad you stumbled on it. I'm a huge fan of the California sound, and this documentary and soundtrack really takes you back to those early days of Laurel Canyon and all of those bands and just the magic that was happening in that canyon. There was so much collaboration and cross-pollination, and you can hear it when you listen to all of the albums of that day. And it just is amazing to think about all of the artists and amazing lyrics and stories that came out of that time period. So I was so glad you picked this. I too love Jakob Dylan and the Wallflowers, and in Never My Love, he is joined by Norah Jones, and her voice is just, when I think of like what an angel might sound like, I often conjure Norah Jones. I just think her voice is so peaceful and lovely, and they did a beautiful job on this song. I think I was saying earlier, I think when we were chatting about it, I would love to see them do a side project, a la Raising Sand, like a Robert Plant, Alison Krauss kind of endeavor. I would love to see a Jakob Dylan, Norah Jones collaboration. And as you mentioned, he collaborates with a lot of great folks on this soundtrack. Beck is featured. He is joined by Neil Young on a couple of songs. Cat Power is there. Jade from Edward Sharpe and the Magnetic Zeros makes an appearance. And so he does Fiona Apple. He does some really great duets, but Never My Love is certainly a standout from the soundtrack. Another one that I loved, and I'm interested to know what your thoughts were, is Go Where You Want to Go, where Jakob Dylan is partnered with Jade from Edward Sharpe and the Magnetic Zeros. And I loved this version of this song. It's originally a Mamas and Papas song, and it's of the same vein almost as like a Go Your Own Way by Fleetwood Mac. We had a lot of free-spirited female lead singers during that time frame, turns out, with a lot of partners that weren't so happy about their spirited nature, shall we we say.
That's a great comparison to go your own way with that song. But yeah, I actually that's one I almost wrote down as well. That one really stood out for me too. It's a song that I knew, but I couldn't put my finger on who sang the original, so I had to look it up and realize it was Mamas and the Papas. But yeah, I mean, really, really kind of different the way they did it in this one versus, so many voices on the Mamas and the Papas kind of harmonizing together and working together. And that was really distinct about the California sound, is the harmonization. And I think that's something that you get a little less of on this album of the remakes, but they do it. They still kind of pull it off. Like you still get the same vibe without the same just like pure harmonies of it as if they're in an a cappella group, because I can't see Jacob Dylan being in some sort of a cappella group at all.
No, no, he doesn't strike me as a acapella.
But no, I love that one. Another one that stood out to me because I was a big fan of these guys back in the day was She, and this was originally a Monkees song. And the Monkees,
Yes.
are kind of laughed at, but they actually put out some really great music. And She is definitely one of those songs. And, in the original, Mickey Dolenz has such a high-pitched voice, right? And then in this remake, you've got Jacob Dylan and Josh Homme, and they both have deeper voices. And they kind of go, the back and forth between them, I think is really pretty cool. Whereas in the original, you just kind of have Mickey Dolenz pretty much the entire time. And then the thing that really stood out to me here is the guitar solo that they used to replace the organ solo from the original, which I thought gave it a really cool feel as well.
100%. And I love too hearing Josh Homme appear on this. We talk about him a lot and Queens of the Stone Age and that sound. And it's interesting because this whole album is a completely different sound. It sounds Wallflowers, it sounds California sound, it sounds Jacob Dylan. And then you introduce Josh Homme and you just have probably what I think is the most rockingest track, I would say, on the soundtrack. This one definitely sounds a little more rocky than some of the other songs on there, and just harsh. I remember this song too, and the Monkees were always so upbeat and silly. And you look at the lyrics of this song, and I'm like, ouch! It starts with the line, "She needs someone to walk on so her feet don't touch the ground." I was like, ooh, that's kind of harsh. And so I felt like I was really able to sort of get into the lyrics of this song and
Yeah.
appreciate it lyrically rather than just kind of a catchy tune I remember hearing from the Monkees. So I loved that it sort of gave it a deeper side for me with this version.
Yeah, it kind of works
And
a
I,
little bit better with the lyrics, the "Why am I standing here wishing she was here," right? And it's just like in
yes.
this version, because it's a little rougher, you kind of get a little bit more of the, yeah, why is he just standing there? Where, the Monkeys version almost sounds has a little bit more lament in it. Like he's there's a little bit more of the like emotion there. He feels more attached to this woman, where I think Dylan at home are a little bit more detached.
Agreed. Yeah. Yeah. And I think another standout track that we just can't sort of end the podcast without mentioning was Expecting to Fly. I've loved the original version of this song. And it's funny, Neil Young is always a polarizing character for me. I have some favorites. I would probably put the Harvest Moon album on like a desert island list. Like I could listen to it over and over, but there's a lot of Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young that I could leave behind. Like he's an artist that I can take or leave, but that song is one I've always loved, and the version that is on this soundtrack, I think is just fantastic. It's just beautiful, and again, lyrically, you can't beat that song. So I think Expecting to Fly is not only a great song that encapsulates that California sound, but this remake really sort of breathed new life into it for me. And I was so happy to get to experience a new version of it.
Yeah, no, I like Neil Young. It's not something that I'll just kind of play like, oh man, I want to listen to some music. Let me throw on some Neil Young. But every time I hear it, it's like I just have such a great appreciation for what he does, both as a writer, and then over time, I've grown to appreciate his voice more. I think because he doesn't have just this kind of classic sort of, oh, what a beautiful singing voice. Like you talked about, Nora Jones, just kind of, this is what an angel sounds like. Like that's not Neil Young, right? But he's got a he does have a great voice though, and it's a distinct voice. And so I love that he, was a part of this album and could kind of lend that unique vocals to, kind of a different version of some of these classic songs.
Yeah, and Regina Spektor guesting with him on this one too was also phenomenal. It was really hard for me to decide with the females he was duetting with. Do I love Cat Power more? Do I love Regina Spektor more? Do I love Nora Jones more?
The Fiona Apple track was great. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I thought that he just did a great job. And I'm not sure if he picked people that he thought would really nail the sound, or if he picked people that he knew were also fans of the California sound. It'd be interesting to understand sort of how he picked the people to collaborate with on this, because they all just slipped in so beautifully, and I thought had such an amazing take on the songs where they weren't trying to reinvent them. And I think Jacob Dylan even says something to this effect at the end of the documentary. Like, we weren't trying to do this big rework of these amazing songs. We just wanted to sort of show our appreciation for them so that they could get passed on to the next generation of musicians and hopefully continue on. And so I really liked that sentiment as well, and thought, like, yep, that puts a perfect bow on the soundtrack. I think that's a great way to sum it up.
Totally agree. Yeah. And I'm looking forward to seeing the documentary.
Yes, it's worth your time. And there are some songs that are in the documentary that didn't feature on the soundtrack. So he does a version of Never My Love with Cat Power that's live.
Oh, nice.
So I was like, that's interesting too, to see like, ooh, which one's better, Cat Power or Nora Jones?
Yeah.
The answer is you can't decide. It's impossible. And then they do a version of Monday Monday. That's really
cool.
Good as well. Yeah, so that's cool. And then I think that the last track I'll call out is their version of You Showed Me. I think that I'll give an honorable mention to, because I think that's going to be a dark horse. I think that's one of those songs that the more you listen to it, the more you're going to be like, you know what? This is the best song on the soundtrack. I thought it was Expecting to Fly. I thought it was Never My Love. I thought it was She, but nope, it's You Showed Me, an original song by the Turtles that, again, in the movie he does with Cat Power, that turns into this like bluesy lullaby. And I just think the more I listen, the more I'm going to fall in love with it.
That's great. Well, I'm already a couple times through the soundtrack, so I'll have to report back and let you know how my likes evolve the more times I listen to it. But yeah, it's a good one, so everyone should check it out.
It is, definitely. Give it a listen. Watch the rock doc. It's a good one, especially if you're into the California sound. And thank you so much, Matt, for sharing what you're listening to this week. And to our listeners, join us again next week to find your new favorite song.